Dearest Gladwell, I don't think we have ever really talked about that day. Not properly. Not in the way it deserves to be talked about. Every year when this date comes around, I tell myself, I'm okay. I tell myself it happened a long time ago. I tell myself I have moved on. But then, the memories come back. And suddenly, 3 years doesn't feel like 3 years at all. It feels like yesterday. It feels like I am standing there again. It feels like I am still that girl. The girl who was busy washing utensils and thinking about absolutely nothing. The girl who had no idea that her entire life was about to change. I kept thinking about how ordinary that day was. How normal it felt. How I never got the chance to prepare. One moment, I was minding my own business. The next moment, I was begging people to move a gas cylinder away from me. I remember telling them. I remember asking. I remember trying to make them understand. And I remember being ignored. That pulse still hurts. Because sometimes I sit and wonder how different my life would be if somebody had just listened. If somebody had just taken me seriously. If somebody had just moved it. Maybe I will still be the same person. Maybe I will still recognize the version of me that existed before that day. But I will never know. Instead, I had an explosion. And then there was fire. I remember screaming. I remember feeling my body burn. I remember standing in the corner terrified. I remember being so terrified that I couldn't even think. I remember running. I remember trying to save myself. I remember looking for a way out while my body was literally on fire. And what that hurts most is knowing that I was completely alone in that moment. Nobody walked through that fire for me. Nobody carried that pain for me. I had to walk through it myself. And somehow, I survived. Sometimes I wish people understood what survival actually costs. Because surviving isn't the happy ending people think it is. Surviving meant waking up in a hospital bed. Surviving meant pain. Surviving meant more dressings. Surviving meant endless tubes. Surviving meant looking at the people I loved and seeing fear in their eyes. Surviving meant losing pieces of myself that I have never fully gotten back. I remember my mom. I remember how worried she was. I remember how her whole life seemed to stop because mine had fallen apart. I remember her showing up every day. I remember her trying to be strong even when I could see that she was scared. And then there was my sister. I don't think I will ever find the right words for what she did for me. She bathed me. She helped me when I couldn't help myself. She saw me when I was at my weakest, at my most vulnerable, at my most broken. And she stayed. Even now, when I think about it, my heart hurts. Because no older sister should have to carry that responsibility. And no younger sister should have had to need that much help. But that became our reality. And then there was the mirror. God. The mirror. I wish I could forget that day. I wish I could erase it from my memory. But I can't. The doctor told me to look. And I did. And for the first time, I saw what the fire had done to me. I saw a version of myself that I didn't recognize. I saw scars. I saw pain. I saw loss. I saw someone I was afraid of becoming. I remember feeling sick. I remember feeling ugly. I remember feeling broken. I remember wanting to die. Not because I didn't want to live, but because I couldn't imagine how I was supposed to live like that. I couldn't imagine how I was supposed to go back into the world. How was I supposed to be seen? How was I supposed to be okay? And maybe that is the part nobody talks about. The grief. Because I wasn't only grieving my injuries, I was grieving myself. I was grieving the girl I used to be. The girl who thought she knew what her future looked like. The girl who never worried about scars. The girl who never worried about being stared at. The girl who disappeared in that fire. And then there was school. I don't think people understand how terrifying it was to go back. I had already hid it from my classmates, and everyone else had continued living their lives while mine had stopped. I kept wondering what people would think when they saw me. Would they stare? Would they ask questions? Would they treat me differently? Would they only see my scars? I was scared. More scared than I ever admitted. I had already spent so much time fighting to survive that I didn't know if I had the strength to face the world again. But I wasn't completely alone. There was someone who refused to let me give up. My friend. I still think about everything she did for me. She came to my house when I needed support. She carried my school bag when simple things felt impossible. She encouraged me when I couldn't encourage myself. She reminded me that there was still a life waiting for me outside of hospital rooms, dressing, pain, and fear. When I wanted to hide from the world, she helped me face it. When I doubted myself, she believed in me. When returning to school felt impossible, she helped me take those first steps back. I don't think she will ever fully understand what that meant to me. Because sometimes, the people who save us don't do it with grand gestures. Sometimes they save us by simply staying, by showing up, by refusing to leave when life becomes difficult. I know friendships change, people grow, life takes us in different directions. And even though ours did too, that still hurts sometimes. I will always be grateful for the role she played in helping me survive one of the darkest chapters of my life. I honestly don't know what would have happened if she hadn't been there. Maybe I would still have found my way. Maybe I wouldn't have. But I do know that carrying that burden would have been much harder without her. And somehow, little by little, I returned to school. Little by little, I started rebuilding a life that had been shattered. Not because I was healed, not because I was ready, but because life kept moving and somehow I found the strength to move with it. And finally, I graduated. There were days in the hospital bed when I never thought I would live long enough to see that moment. There were days when the future felt impossible to imagine, and yet somehow I made it there. But the truth is, graduating didn't erase what had happened. The scars are still there. The memories are still there. The anger was still there. And I'm still angry that I carry scars while other people got to continue living with their lives. People talk about forgiveness like it's so easy. It isn't. Not for me. Not yet. Maybe one day my feelings will change. Maybe they won't. All I know is that when I look at my scars, I remember. When I think about the hospital, I remember. When this date comes around every year, I remember. And some days, that memory still hurts as much as it ever did. The truth is that I don't even have a perfect ending for this letter. I don't have closure. I don't have all the answers. I am not completely healed. I am not completely over it. There are still days I cry. There are still days I feel angry. There are still days I wish none of it had ever happened. But there's one thing I know. You survived something that should have broken you. And even now, on the days when you feel lost, hurt, angry, exhausted, or defeated, you are still here. Not healed, not whole, but here. And for now, that has to be enough. With love, Gladwell.